The exam hall was silent except for the scratching of pens and the occasional nervous cough. I watched my sister Claire's face turn from confident to confused to panicked as she worked through the National Scholarship Examination, the test that would determine everything about our futures. Her perfectly manicured fingers trembled slightly as she flipped through the pages, and I knew exactly why. Every single answer I'd given her last night was wrong. I'd died 3 months ago in my previous life. Or rather, 3 months from now. Claire had poisoned my tea the night before this very exam, ensuring I'd be too sick to take it while she sailed through with the answers I'd innocently shared. In that life, I'd trusted her completely. I'd thought we were a team, bound by blood and sisterhood. I'd woken up vomiting, my vision blurred, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't even hold a pencil. Mom had refused to call a doctor, insisting I was just nervous. Claire had taken the test, scored perfectly, and received the full scholarship to Thornbury Academy, the most prestigious institution in the country, the golden ticket to wealth, connections, and power. I'd gotten nothing, worse than nothing. The family had blamed me for embarrassing them with my absence, and my failures had only multiplied from there. But now I was back, reborn on my 16th birthday, with every memory of that terrible future burned into my mind. And this time, I knew exactly what game we were playing. Claire caught my eye across the examination room and gave me a small, secret smile. She thought she was so clever, thought I had no idea she drugged my morning tea with a sedative that very day. What she didn't know was that I'd switched our cups when she wasn't looking. The drowsiness clouding her mind right now, that was her own medicine, literally. And those answers she'd wheedled out of me over the past week, claiming she just wanted to study together, every single one was carefully, deliberately incorrect. The proctor called time. Claire's face went white. I handed in my exam with a smile. This was just the beginning. To understand why I felt no guilt watching my sister's world crumble, you'd have to understand what the Hartley family was really like behind closed doors. We weren't always wealthy, but we'd always been cruel. My mother, Patricia Hartley, came from old money that had dwindled to almost nothing by the time she married my father, James. Dad had built a modest fortune through careful investments, but it was never enough for Mom. She wanted the prestige back, the country clubs, the social standing, and somewhere along the way, she decided that only one of her daughters was worthy of carrying that dream forward. Claire was born first, arriving 2 years before me in a picture-perfect delivery that Mom loved to recount at dinner parties. Not a single complication, she'd say, beaming at Claire. She was an angel from the moment she entered the world. Arrived during a difficult labor that left Mom bedridden for weeks. She never quite forgave me for it. From my earliest memories, the favoritism was blatant. Claire got the larger bedroom with the window seat and the built-in bookshelves. I got the room that was really meant to be a storage space, barely big enough for a twin bed and a small desk. Claire got music lessons, dance lessons, art tutors, and language coaches. I got hand-me-down books and lectures about being grateful for what I had. When Claire wanted a new dress for school pictures, Mom would drive her to the boutique downtown and spend hours helping her choose. When I needed clothes, I got Claire's old things, altered to fit my smaller frame. "You should thank your sister. Mama didn't me," Mom would say, watching me try on a dress Claire had worn to death. "She could have thrown these away, but she's generous enough to let you have them." Dad was no better. He was a distant figure who spent most of his time at the office, but when he was home, all his attention went to Claire. He'd ask about her grades, her friends, her activities. When I tried to join the conversation, his eyes would glaze over with disinterest. "That's nice, Lily," he'd say absently, already turning back to Claire. The real abuse wasn't physical, though there were a few slaps and shoves over the years. It was the systematic erasure of my existence as anything more than Claire's shadow. At family gatherings, Mom would introduce Claire with pride. "This is my daughter Claire. She's at the top of her class and captain of the debate team." Then she'd gesture vaguely in my direction. "And this is Lily." No achievements, no personality, no worth. Just Lily. School was my only refuge, the one place where I could prove I was just as smart, just as capable as my perfect sister. Better, even. I studied obsessively, not because I loved learning, but because good grades were the only form of value my family might recognize. By our sophomore year of high school, I was ranked third in our class. Claire was fifth, but somehow that didn't matter. When I brought home a perfect score on a chemistry test, Mom glanced at it and said, "Claire got a 98. You must have had an easier teacher." When Claire got a 92 on the same test the next day, Mom put it on the refrigerator and called Dad at work to tell him how brilliant our daughter was. The scholarship examination had been my last hope in my previous life. The Thornberry Scholarship was a full ride to the most elite academy in the country, the kind of opportunity that could change everything. Only 2 students from each region would receive it, chosen based on a single comprehensive exam covering everything from advanced mathematics to literature analysis to scientific reasoning. I'd studied for months, given up sleep and social life and everything else. Claire had barely prepared, confident in her natural charm and the connections our family name still carried. 2 weeks before the exam, Claire had come to my room with an unusual request. "Lily, can we study together? I'm actually nervous about this one." She'd smiled sweetly, played the caring sister act. I'd been so desperate for her approval, for any scrap of sisterly affection, that I'd said yes immediately. We'd studied every night. I'd explained concepts, worked through practice problems, shared every strategy I'd developed. Claire had been attentive, grateful, almost loving. For those 2 weeks, I'd felt like maybe we could be real sisters after all. Maybe the family dynamic could change. The night before the exam, Claire had made us tea. "To calm our nerves," she'd said, handing me a cup. I'd drunk it gratefully, touched by the gesture. I woke up 6 hours later, violently ill. My stomach felt like it was being twisted in knots, my head pounded, and the room spun when I tried to sit up. I called for Mom, but she'd just stood in my doorway with her arms crossed. "You're fine, it's just test anxiety. Claire has the same exam today, and she's perfectly well. Don't be so dramatic." I'd tried to get up anyway, but my legs wouldn't support me. I'd spent the exam day vomiting into a bucket, missing the opportunity I'd worked so hard for. Claire had taken the test and scored a perfect 400 out of 400. She received the scholarship, the acclaim, the future. I'd learned later, much later, that she'd stolen my study guides and given them to several of her friends, who'd also scored suspiciously high. But Claire's score had stood out as particularly impressive, and no one had questioned it. Why would they? She was Patricia Hartley's daughter, after all, the good one. In the months that followed, everything had gotten worse. Without the scholarship, I had no path to a good university. Dad refused to pay for my education when I'd wasted the free opportunity. Claire went off to Thornbury Academy and came home with stories about galas and networking events and important families. I got a job at a coffee shop and saved every penny, hoping to eventually afford community college classes. Then Claire had needed money. A lot of money. She'd gotten involved with the wrong crowd at Thornbury, had debts she couldn't pay. She'd come home crying, playing the victim, and Mom had immediately looked at me. "You have savings, don't you, Lily? Your sister needs help." "That's for my education," I'd protested weakly. "Your education?" Mom had laughed. "What education? You're working in a coffee shop. Claire is going to be someone important someday. She needs this money more than you do." I'd tried to refuse. Dad had made it simple. Give your sister the money or find somewhere else to live. I'd handed over everything I'd saved, $15,000. Claire had promised to pay me back, had hugged me and called me her hero. I never saw a single dollar of it. The next year, she'd needed more and more. Each time, the threats got less subtle. Give Claire money or lose. Your place in the family. Help Claire or we'll cut you off completely. I'd started taking extra shifts, sleeping 4 hours a night, ruining my health to fund my sister's increasingly lavish lifestyle. The final betrayal had come on my 19th birthday. Claire had come home from Thornbury for the weekend with her new boyfriend, Marcus Sterling, heir to the Sterling tech fortune, one of the most eligible bachelors in the country. I'd been serving cake in the dining room when Claire had pulled me aside. "Marcus really likes you," she'd whispered. "He thinks you're sweet. Maybe you two could go out sometime? He has this friend Robert who's also nice." I'd been stunned. Was Claire actually trying to set me up? After years of treating me like dirt, was she finally seeing me as a person? The truth had been so much worse. Marcus had been using me to get information about Claire's financial situation. He'd wanted to know if she was as wealthy as she pretended. My naive answers had given him everything he needed, and he'd dumped Claire 2 weeks later, publicly humiliating her at a Thornberry gala. Claire had blamed me. Not Marcus for using us both, not herself for lying about her finances, but me. She'd convinced Mom and Dad that I'd tried to steal her boyfriend out of jealousy. Dad had called me a conniving little snake and told me to pack my bags. Mom had slapped me across the face and told me I was dead to them. I'd left with one suitcase and the clothes on my back. I'd tried to make it on my own, but without references or family support, I'd spiraled. Bad jobs, worse apartments, dangerous neighborhoods. I'd been surviving barely when Claire had reached out 18 months later. "I'm getting married," she'd said over the phone, her voice warm and loving again. "To Jason Blackwell. You remember him? From the academy? His family owns half the real estate in the city. I want you to come to the wedding. I know things have been hard between us, but you're still my sister." I'd been so desperate for reconciliation that I'd gone. I'd spent my last $200 on a decent dress and a gift. I'd shown up at the Blackwell estate feeling out of place among the wealthy guests, but hopeful that maybe this was a new beginning. Claire had greeted me with a smile and poison in her eyes. "I need you to sign something," she'd said, pulling me aside. "Just a formality. A waiver saying you have no claim to the family inheritance." "What inheritance?" I'd asked. "Mom and Dad cut me off. They're changing their will, leaving everything to me. I just need you to sign that you agree." I'd been too broken to fight. I'd signed. What did it matter? They had nothing I wanted anymore. 3 weeks later, I'd learned the truth. Our paternal grandmother, who'd been estranged from Dad for decades, had passed away. She'd left her entire fortune, $12 million, to be split equally between her two granddaughters. Claire had known. She'd seen the lawyer's letter and hidden it from everyone. The waiver I'd signed wasn't about Mom and Dad's inheritance. It was a legally binding document surrendering my claim to grandmother's estate. By the time I discovered the truth, it was too late. The money was Claire's, all of it. I'd hired a lawyer with money I didn't have, but the document was ironclad. I'd signed away millions of dollars, and there was nothing I could do about it. The last thing I remembered from my previous life was standing on a bridge looking down at the dark water, wondering if anyone would even notice I was gone. I'd been so tired. Tired of fighting, tired of being invisible, tired of living in a world that had been designed to destroy me. I'd stepped forward, and then I'd woken up on my 16th birthday, 3 years in the past, with a second chance to rewrite everything. The morning after the scholarship exam, I woke up to the sound of Claire crying in her room. It was a deep, ugly sobbing, the kind that came from genuine despair. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a twinge of sympathy. Then I remembered the taste of poison in my tea, the feeling of my stomach revolting, the way Mom had looked at me with disgust as I'd begged her to call a doctor. The sympathy died. I got up and padded downstairs where Mom was already on the phone. Her face was pinched with anger. "Yes, I understand there's an appeals process," she was saying tersely, "but surely there's been some mistake. Claire is an exceptional student. This test must have been scored incorrectly." I poured myself a bowl of cereal and sat at the kitchen table listening. "What do you mean the scores are final? My daughter studied with someone who understood the material, and she's saying all the information was wrong. This is clearly—" Mom paused, listening, and her face grew darker. "I see, yes, thank you." She hung up and turned to me with accusatory eyes. "What did you tell your sister while you were studying?" I blinked innocently. Everything I knew. Why? Because she failed, Lily. She scored a 212 out of 400. That's not just bad, that's catastrophic. And yet you apparently scored a 394. Her voice dripped with disbelief. "The school is calling your score one of the highest in the region. They want to interview you for a feature article." I let that sink in for a moment, savoring it. In my previous life, Claire had scored the perfect 400. This time, I had. And Claire had crashed and burned. "I don't understand," I said carefully. "We studied the same material. Maybe she was just nervous?" "Nervous." Mom's laugh was bitter. Your sister doesn't get nervous. She said you gave her answers to practice problems and she memorized them exactly. But apparently, every single one was wrong. Did you do this on purpose? The accusation hung in the air. I met Mom's eyes and let her see nothing but confusion and hurt. Why? Would I sabotage my own sister? I want her to succeed. I have always wanted her to succeed. It was technically true. In my first life, I had wanted that. Now I wanted something different. Dad came down the stairs, his face stormy. Claire says you poisoned her study materials. That's ridiculous, I said. And it wasn't even a lie. I hadn't poisoned her study materials. I'd just given her the wrong information. I studied the same way I always do. It's not my fault if she didn't retain the information. She retained it perfectly, Dad snapped. That's the problem. She memorized exactly what you told her, and it was all wrong. I shrugged helplessly. Maybe I misunderstood some concepts? I'm not perfect. But I obviously understood enough to score well on the actual exam. Claire appeared in the doorway, her eyes red and swollen. When she saw me, her face twisted with hate. You did this on purpose. You knew I was relying on you, and you fed me garbage. I gave you everything I studied, I said calmly. If you failed, that's on you. Maybe you should have studied on your own instead of trying to copy my work. Enough, Mom's voice cracked like a whip. Lily, go to your room. Claire, we need to discuss damage control. As I left, I heard Dad say, can we get her into Thornbury with connections? The Ashford family owes me a favor. I smiled as I climbed the stairs. In my previous life, Claire had used the scholarship and our family's remaining connections to cement her place at Thornbury. This time, those connections would be wasted on trying to bypass the humiliation of her failure, and they'd have nothing left for when I really needed them to fall. The scholarship letter arrived 3 days later. It was addressed to me, with the Thornbury Academy seal embossed in gold. I opened it at the breakfast table, watching Claire's face over the edge of the envelope. Dear Miss Hartley, it is our distinct pleasure to inform you that you have been selected as one of 2 regional recipients of the Thornbury Scholarship. Your score of 394 demonstrates exceptional aptitude and promise. We look forward to welcoming you to our academy this fall. I stopped reading aloud and looked up. Claire had gone deathly pale. Mom's coffee cup was frozen halfway to her lips. Dad was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Well, I said brightly, I guess I'll be going to Thornbury after all. Claire stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is wrong. This is all wrong. You're not supposed to. She stopped herself, but the damage was done. I'm not supposed to what? I asked softly. Succeed? Do well? Get opportunities? What exactly am I not supposed to do, Claire? Girls, Mom said warningly, but there was something uncertain in her voice now. For the first time in 16 years, she was looking at me like I might be someone worth noticing. Dad cleared his throat. Congratulations, Lily. This is unexpected, but well done. The words were grudging, minimal, but they were there. In my first life, I'd never heard them at all. That night, Claire came to my room. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, her arms crossed. What's your game? I don't have a game, I said, not looking up from my book. I studied. I took a test. I did well. That's how it works. No. She shook her head. You've never beaten me at anything. Ever. You're not smarter than me, Lily. So what did you do? I finally looked at her and I let her see the truth in my eyes. I stopped helping you. She recoiled like I'd slapped her. What? You've spent our entire lives using me, I said calmly. You take my notes, my study guides, my explanations, and then you present them as your own brilliance. You've never actually learned anything. You've just learned how to steal from me and make it look like your own work. That's not... This time, I let you steal, I continued. I gave you exactly what you asked for, the wrong answers, and you were so confident in your ability to take shortcuts that you memorized them without even checking if they were correct. Claire's face went through several shades of red. You manipulative little bitch. I learned from the best, I said sweetly. She lunged at me, but I was ready. I'd known this was coming. I stepped aside and she crashed into my desk, sending books scattering. Mom burst through the door a second later. What is going on in here? Claire was breathing hard, her hands clenched into fists. She admitted it. She sabotaged me on purpose. I didn't sabotage you, I said, turning to Mom with wide, innocent eyes. I studied the way I always do. Claire asked to study with me and I let her. If she failed, that's because she didn't understand the material well enough. How is that my fault? Mom looked between us, and for the first time I saw doubt on her face. Doubt about Claire. Did you rely on Lily for the test? I studied with her, yes, but did you do your own work? Your own practice problems? Or did you just memorize what Lily told you? Claire's silence was damning. Mom's expression hardened. Claire, I've invested thousands of dollars in your education. Private tutors, special programs, every advantage we could give you, and you're telling me you failed this test because you copied your sister's work instead of actually studying? She gave me wrong answers on purpose. Can you prove that? Mom's voice was ice. Or is it possible that you simply didn't understand the material and assumed Lily didn't either? I watched Claire realize she'd lost this battle. There was no way to prove I'd sabotaged her without admitting she'd planned to cheat using my work. And now Mom was looking at her not with sympathy, but with disappointment. Go to your room, Mom said. We'll discuss this later. After Claire left, Mom turned to me. For a long moment, she just looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time. You really earned this scholarship? Yes. You've been this smart the whole time? The question stung more than any insult she'd ever thrown at me. Yes. Something flickered across her face, regret, maybe, or recognition of a massive miscalculation, but she just nodded. Well, don't let it go to your head. Thornberry is where you'll prove what you're really worth. It wasn't much. It wasn't an apology or even real acknowledgement of the years of favoritism and cruelty. But it was a crack in the foundation, and cracks could be widened. I spent the next 3 months preparing for Thornberry with a focus I'd never had before. I knew what was coming. In my first life, Claire had used her time at the academy to make connections, but she'd also made enemies. She'd been arrogant and sloppy, convinced her family name and charm would carry her through. She'd borrowed money she couldn't pay back, made promises she couldn't keep, and generally burned bridges left and right. I wouldn't make those mistakes. I'd be strategic, careful, and above all, I'd use the knowledge of the future to position myself perfectly. The first step was understanding the social landscape. Thornberry wasn't just a school, it was a training ground for the elite, a place where the next generation of business leaders, politicians, and socialites learned to play the game. The real education wasn't in the classrooms, but in the networks you built, the alliances you formed, and the secrets you learned to keep. In my previous life, I'd learned this too late, watching from the outside as Claire navigated a world I could never access. This time, I'd be inside from day one, and I'd use every advantage I had. The night before I left for Thornbury, Dad called me into his study. It was the first time he'd ever requested a private conversation with me. I sat in the leather chair across from his desk and waited. Lily, he began, then paused, seeming unsure how to continue. I want you to understand something about this family. Yes? We invested everything in Claire because we believed she had the best chance of success. It wasn't personal. Wasn't personal. Years of neglect, of being treated as lesser, of being invisible. None of it was personal. I understand, I said, because there was no point arguing. But you've proven yourself capable. More than capable. He leaned forward. Thornberry is an opportunity. Don't waste it. Make connections. Find powerful friends. And remember that you represent the Hartley name now. The Hartley name. The same name he'd been willing to drag through mud by disowning me in my previous life. but I just nodded. I won't waste it. Good. He opened a drawer and pulled out a checkbook. Here. $5,000 for your expenses. Make it last. In my previous life, Claire had gotten $15,000 for her first semester alone. But I took the check and smiled. Thank you, Dad. Make us proud, Lily. I left his study thinking about how easy it was to make people believe what they wanted to believe. Dad wanted to think he'd made the right choice, refocusing the family's resources. Mom wanted to believe she hadn't wasted years backing the wrong daughter. And Claire wanted to convince herself that my success was a fluke. Let them believe it. Their beliefs didn't matter. Only results did. Thornberry Academy sat on 300 acres of pristine Connecticut countryside, a sprawling campus of Gothic architecture and manicured lawns. The main building was a cathedral of wealth, all stone arches and stained glass windows, designed to remind students that they were special, chosen, destined for greatness. I arrived on a gray September morning, my single suitcase looking shabby next to the designer luggage filling the circular drive. Parents were hugging their children goodbye, taking photos, promising to visit. My parents hadn't come. Dad had important meetings, and Mom had to help Claire settle into her local university. Claire had ended up at State, a decent school but nowhere near Thornberry's level. The family hadn't recovered from the disappointment. I didn't mind arriving alone. In my previous life, I'd watched Claire navigate these halls with the confidence of someone who belonged. I'd seen her make friends effortlessly, collecting people like accessories. I'd watched her charm, manipulate, and ultimately alienate nearly everyone she met. This time would be different. I knew everyone's secrets before they even made the mistakes that would create them. My roommate was Sophia Chen, daughter of tech moguls, quiet and intense. In my previous life, Claire had befriended her briefly before offending her family at a dinner party. Sophia had become one of Claire's most dangerous enemies, using her family's resources to systematically undermine every business venture Claire attempted after graduation. Hi, Sophia said as I entered our room, barely looking up from her laptop. You're Lily Hartley. I'm Sophia. That bed's yours. She pointed to the left side of the room, where a plain bed frame and basic furniture waited. Her side was already personalized, string lights, photos, a portable espresso machine, all the comforts of home. Thanks, and then setting down my suitcase. I watched her for a moment, noting the defensive hunch of her shoulders, the way she'd positioned herself to see both the door and window. Sophia had trust issues, I remembered. Her ex-best friend had sold a story about her family to a tabloid last year. I'm not much of a talker, Sophia said, still not looking at me. If you're looking for someone to gossip with or whatever, we probably won't work out. That's fine. I'm here to study. Now she did look up, assessing me. You're the scholarship kid? The one who scored 394? That's me. Impressive. She turned back to her laptop, says, most scholarship students wash out first semester. Can't handle the social pressure. I don't care about social pressure. A small smile. Good. You'll last longer than most then. We settled into an easy silence. I unpacked my meager belongings while Sophia typed away at something. As I worked, I mentally reviewed what I knew about the first semester. The key players, the social dynamics, the events that would make or break reputations. There was Marcus Sterling, the heir who'd used me to investigate Claire's finances. He'd be starting his second year now, still dating someone named Rachel Vance. A relationship I knew would end spectacularly when Marcus's gambling debts came to light in December. If I timed it right, I could be the one to discover those debts and position myself as Rachel's ally. There was Isabel Ashford, daughter of the family that Dad had mentioned owed him a favor. In my previous life, Claire had tried to use that connection and burned it by stealing Isabel's jewelry at a party. Isabel had enough influence to destroy reputations with a single Instagram post, and there was Professor Martin Chen, Sophia's uncle, though few people knew about their relationship. He taught the advanced business strategy course that every serious student wanted to take. Only 15 students were selected each year based on a competitive application process. In my previous life, Claire had schemed her way into the class through connections but had been kicked out for plagiarism. The spot that opened up had gone to a student named Derek Wallace, who'd gone on to become one of the youngest venture capitalists in the country. I needed that spot. I needed Professor Chen's mentorship, and I needed Sophia to trust me enough to make an introduction. Hey, I said, breaking the silence. You're taking advanced calculus 2 this semester, right? Sophia looked up, surprised. How did you know? Saw it on the posted enrollment lists. I'm in that class too. Want to be study partners? She studied me for a long moment. You're not going to be one of those people who uses me to meet my family, are you? Direct. I could work with direct. I don't care about your family. I care about passing Calc 2, which is supposedly impossible without a study group. It is impossible, Sophia agreed. Professor Williams fails 60% of his students. He thinks it builds character. So, another small smile. Sure, study partners. But I'm serious about studying. No slacking. I don't slack. We'll see. That first week at Thornbury was a masterclass in social observation. I kept my head down, attended classes, took meticulous notes, and watched everyone. The students here were different from public school kids. They carried themselves with the unconscious confidence of people who'd never questioned whether they belonged. Their clothes were expensive but deliberately casual, their conversations full of references to summer homes and exotic vacations and family friends in positions of power. I didn't try to fit in. I couldn't, not yet. Instead, I focused on becoming useful. When a girl in my English class mentioned struggling with the reading, I offered to explain the themes. When a guy in my economics section needed notes from a class he'd missed, I handed over my detailed summaries without being asked. I was quietly competent, reliably helpful, and completely unthreatening. By the end of the first week, people knew my name. By the end of the second, they were starting to ask for my help regularly. I never said no, and I never asked for anything in return. I was building a reputation as someone trustworthy, someone generous, someone who didn't play games. It was all strategy. In my previous life, I'd learned that power at Thornbury didn't come from being the loudest or the most popular. It came from being the person everyone needed but no one feared. Claire had never understood that. She'd tried to dominate, to be the center of attention, and she'd made herself a target. I would be different. I would be essential. The first major test came in October, during the annual Thornbury Charity Gala. It was the social event of the fall semester, a black tie affair where students were expected to bring family members and network with the Academy's wealthy donors. In my previous life, Claire had used the gala to make her move on Marcus Sterling, deliberately seducing him away from his girlfriend to prove she could. It had worked in the short term, but had made her enemies among the other students. I had different plans. The day before the gala, I found Sophia stress-eating chocolate in our room. My parents can't come, she said through a mouthful of expensive truffle. They're in Singapore closing a deal. My uncle said he'd escort me, but showing up with faculty feels like admitting I don't have real connections. This was the opening I'd been waiting for, and my parents aren't coming either, I said. Want to go together? We can be each other's moral support. She looked at me with surprise. You'd want to be seen with me. I'm not exactly popular, Lily. People think I'm weird. People think I'm a charity case. We can be weird and poor together. She laughed, a real laugh that lit up her whole face. Okay, deal, but I'm wearing blue, so you need to coordinate. The gala was held in Thornbury's historic ballroom, a space dripping with crystal chandeliers and old money. Students arrived with their parents, preening and posing for photos that would end up on social media. I arrived with Sophia, both of us in simple but elegant dresses, mine a silver sheath I'd found at a consignment shop, hers a midnight blue silk that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. We made an odd pair, but we made it work. Sophia introduced me to her uncle, Professor Chen, who'd come as her escort after all. He was a small man with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. Sophia says you're brilliant, he said, studying me. High praise from her. She doesn't suffer fools. Lily's the real deal, Sophia confirmed. Top of our calc class, and she actually understands the proofs. Impressive, Professor Chen handed me his card. Apply for my business strategy course next semester. I have a feeling you'd be a good fit. Just like that, I had an in. No scheming, no manipulation, just genuine competence and a good roommate. The evening progressed smoothly until I spotted Marcus Sterling near the bar, looking agitated. He was arguing with someone on his phone, his face flushed with anger or embarrassment. Rachel Vance was across the room, pointedly ignoring him. In my previous life, this would have been the moment Claire swooped in, offering comfort and flirtation. It had been the beginning of the end for Marcus and Rachel, and eventually for Claire too, when Marcus's true nature came out. I stayed exactly where I was and watched the drama unfold from a safe distance. "That's Marcus Sterling," Sophia said, following my gaze. "Total disaster. My uncle says his family's scrambling to cover his gambling debts." So it was already starting, earlier than I'd remembered, but close enough. "Really?" "Apparently he's into some casino in Atlantic City for 6 figures. His parents keep bailing him out, but they're getting tired of it." She sipped her champagne. "Rachel's smart to keep her distance." As if on cue, Rachel walked past Marcus without a glance and headed straight for the exit. She looked upset, her eyes red-rimmed. On impulse, I followed her. I found her in the women's bathroom, leaning against the sink and breathing hard. She looked up when I entered, immediately defensive. "What do you want?" "Nothing. Just wanted to make sure you're okay." "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." She laughed bitterly. "Thanks. Really helpful." I held up my hands. "Sorry, I'm Lily Hartley. We have English together. You sit 2 rows ahead of me." "I know who you are. You're the scholarship girl everyone's talking about." She wiped at her eyes, smearing her expensive mascara. "The one who scored higher than anyone in a decade." "That's me." I grabbed some tissues and handed them to her. "For what it's worth, Marcus Sterling isn't worth crying over." Rachel took the tissues but eyed me suspiciously. "How would you know? You've been here, 6 weeks?" "Long enough to see that he's constantly on his phone arguing with someone, that he drinks too much, and that he treats you like an accessory instead of a person." I shrugged. "But maybe I'm wrong. I don't really know either of you." She stared at me for a long moment, then laughed, a real, genuine laugh. "You're not wrong. I've been telling myself he'll change, but he won't. His family has money problems. Did you know that? Real problems. But he keeps spending like nothing's wrong." "Then why stay with him?" "Because breaking up with Marcus Sterling is social suicide at Thornbury. His family has connections everywhere. If I dump him, especially publicly, I'll be frozen out." She dabbed at Todd. Her eyes again. "It's stupid. I know it's stupid. But this place runs on connections, and burning the wrong bridge can destroy your entire future." This was my moment. In my previous life, Claire had isolated Rachel by stealing Marcus, turning her into an enemy, but enemies could become allies if you played it right. "What if you didn't have to dump him publicly?" I said slowly. "What if he dumped you?" Rachel's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about controlling the narrative. Right now you're trapped because leaving makes you look like the bad guy. But what if Marcus was the one who looked bad? What if everyone knew he was the problem, not you? How would that even work?" I thought about what I knew, what would happen in the coming weeks. Marcus's gambling debts would eventually come out, but not until after Christmas. That was too long for Rachel to suffer. But if someone accelerated that timeline, if the right information got to the right people. "Do you know where he gambles?" I asked. "Atlantic City, the Sapphire Palace. He goes every other weekend." Rachel was watching me carefully now, trying to figure out my angle. "Why?" "Because gambling debts are a matter of record. If someone requested information from the casino about his account status, about how much he owes, they wouldn't release that information to just anyone." "No," I agreed. "But they might release it to his parents if they were concerned about their son's well-being, or to his girlfriend if she was worried about him." Rachel's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to something that looked almost like respect. "You're saying I should request his records? Expose his debts?" "I'm saying you should protect yourself. If you know the truth about his financial situation, you can make informed decisions. And if that information happens to become public knowledge somehow, I shrugged. Well, these things have a way of getting out. Why are you helping me? We don't even know each other. Because Marcus Sterling is exactly the kind of guy who ruins lives for fun. And because you seem like someone who deserves better. I met her eyes. And maybe because having friends at Thornbury seems like a good idea, and you seem like someone worth being friends with. Rachel studied me for a long moment, then smiled. A sharp, calculating smile that told me she was much smarter than people gave her credit for. Okay, Lily Hartley, let's be friends. And let's bury Marcus Sterling. We spent the next hour in that bathroom, plotting. Rachel had access to Marcus's personal information, phone numbers, social security number, all the details she'd need to request records from the casino. She'd play the concerned girlfriend, worried about his gambling problem, desperate to understand the scope of the issue. Casinos loved concerned family members. It made them look responsible when they handed over account details. Once we had proof of the debts, the rest would be easy. A leaked photo of the documentation, some strategic whispers in the right ears, and Marcus's reputation would crumble. The Sterling family would have to step in publicly to do damage control, which would only confirm the story. And Rachel would be positioned as the innocent victim who'd bravely stood by her boyfriend until she couldn't anymore. By the time we left the bathroom, we had a plan and an alliance. Rachel returned to the gala with me, and when Marcus approached her, she was all cool politeness. I'm spending time with my new friend Lily, she said sweetly. You remember how to make friends, don't you, Marcus? Or are they all at the Sapphire Palace? His face went white. What did you... Have a lovely evening. She linked her arm through mine, and we walked away, leaving him stammering. Sophia raised her eyebrows when we rejoined her. Did you just make friends with Rachel Vance? Is that a problem? No, it's just unexpected. Rachel doesn't usually befriend scholarship students. No offense. None taken. Maybe she's expanding her horizons. Rachel proved to be a valuable ally. Within a week, she had Marcus's casino records, $600,000 in debt, with more accumulating every weekend. The documents showed a pattern of reckless betting, desperate doubling down, and increasingly frantic attempts to win back losses. It was ugly, and it was irrefutable. Jesus, Rachel breathed when she showed me the papers. $600,000. His parents have been covering it, but there's notes here about them cutting him off after the next payment. If he can't pay, he'll have a problem, I finished. A big one. Should I feel bad about this? She looked at me, genuine uncertainty in her eyes. He's awful, but this will destroy him. He was destroying himself, I said gently. You're just making sure you're not collateral damage. She nodded slowly. Okay, let's do this. The leak was strategic. Rachel, accidentally, left copies of the documents in the library where they were discovered by Jennifer Park, Thornbury's most prolific gossip. By dinner, everyone knew. By midnight, Marcus's parents had been called. By morning, Marcus was gone, withdrawn from Thornbury indefinitely to deal with personal issues. Rachel played her part perfectly, devastated but dignified. I had no idea it was this bad, she told anyone who asked. I tried to help him, but he refused. I hope he gets the help he needs. She became a sympathetic figure overnight, the girl who'd stood by her troubled boyfriend until she couldn't anymore. And I became the friend who'd supported her through it all, the scholarship student with surprising savvy and loyalty. More importantly, I'd removed a major player from the board. Marcus Sterling wouldn't be around to cause problems, to make connections, to become the influential figure he'd been in my first life. One threat neutralized. November brought midterms, and the opening of applications for Professor Chen's Advanced Business Strategy course. I spent 2 weeks crafting my application essay, drawing on everything I'd learned from my previous life about business, strategy, and the real mechanisms of power. I wrote about understanding markets through human psychology, about the importance of timing and patience, about seeing opportunities where others saw only obstacles. Sophia read my essay and whistled. This is good. Like really good. Where did you learn to think like this? Hard experience, I said, which was true enough. Professor Chen's class had 15 spots and over 100 applicants. The competition was brutal. I submitted my application and waited, using the time to strengthen other connections. I became a regular at Rachel's study sessions, which attracted some of Thornbury's more serious students. I helped Sophia with a coding project that impressed her parents enough to invite me to their home for Thanksgiving, an invitation I accepted since my own family had made it clear they expected me to find my own plans for the holiday. The Chen family's estate in San Francisco was a modern masterpiece of glass and steel, perched on a hillside with views of the bay. Sophia's parents were warm and brilliant. Her younger brother was a gaming prodigy, and Professor Chen was there with his wife and twin daughters. It was the first real family gathering I'd been part of in either life, and it made me realize just how dysfunctional the Hartley family really was. "So you're the roommate who's been keeping Sophia sane," Mrs. Chen said over dinner, smiling at me. "She says you're the hardest worker she's ever met." "Lily's incredible," Sophia confirmed. She helped 3 people pass Calc 2 midterms. Professor Williams actually asked if she wanted to TA next semester. "That's quite an achievement," Mr. Chen said. "Williams doesn't hand out compliments. Are you interested in teaching?" "Eventually, maybe. Right now, I'm focused on learning as much as I can. I applied for Professor Chen's business strategy course." "Oh?" Professor Chen looked interested. "I remember. Your essay was excellent. Very mature thinking for an undergraduate." I tried not to show my excitement. "Thank you, sir. The decisions will be posted next week, but I can tell you that you're a strong candidate." He paused. "Actually, I wanted to discuss something with you. Have you thought about your career path, what you want to do after Thornbury?" "I want to start my own company," I said, the words coming easily because they were true. In my first life, I'd never had the confidence or resources to dream that big. This time, I knew exactly what was possible. Something in tech or finance, something that solves real problems. Ambitious? He nodded approvingly. "Sophia, you should introduce Lily to some of your parents' portfolio companies. She might find interesting opportunities." That Thanksgiving became a turning point. The Chen family took me in, not as charity, but as one of their own. Sophia's parents offered me a summer internship at one of their venture capital firms. Professor Chen gave me a reading list of business books that would accelerate my education. Even Sophia's brother showed me the app he was developing and asked for my feedback on the business model. I returned to Thornbury feeling, for the first time in either life, like I had people in my corner who actually wanted me to succeed. The acceptance letter for Professor Chen's class arrived on the first day of December. 15 spots, 100 applicants, and I was in. The list of accepted students read like a who's who of Thornbury's future elite. Derek Wallace, Isabella Cruz, Jonathan Hartford, and 12 others who would go on to shape industries and economies. And me, Lily Hartley, the scholarship student from nowhere. The class met twice a week in a seminar room in Thornbury's business building. Professor Chen ran it like a graduate course, expecting PhD-level thinking from undergraduate students. We analyzed real companies, real crises, real strategic decisions. Each week, a different student presented a case study and defended their strategic recommendations while the rest of the class tried to tear their analysis apart. It was brutal. It was exhilarating. It was exactly what I needed. My first presentation came in January, after winter break. I'd chosen to analyze a hostile takeover attempt in the pharmaceutical industry, a case that I knew from my previous life had resulted in disaster for both companies involved. But I didn't present it as history. I presented it as an ongoing case, making predictions about what would happen based on my strategic analysis. "The acquiring company is overextended," I explained, pointing to financial data on the screen. "They're funding this takeover with debt they can't service if anything goes wrong. Meanwhile, the target company has hidden assets, specifically 3 drug candidates in phase 3 trials that aren't being valued correctly by the market. If the takeover succeeds, the debt load will kill both companies. If it fails, the target company will emerge stronger, and the acquirer will be vulnerable." "So, what's your strategic recommendation?" Professor Chen asked. "If I were the target company, I'd fight the takeover publicly while quietly accelerating the phase 3 trials." Get data out faster, prove the value of the drug candidates, and watch your stock price rise above the acquisition offer. The acquirer will either have to raise their bid and take on even more debt or walk away. Either way, they're weakened and you're stronger. Derek Wallace, a third-year student with an ego the size of Connecticut, scoffed. That's incredibly risky. If the trials fail, you've destroyed shareholder value. If you let yourself be acquired by a debt-laden acquirer, you've destroyed the company, I countered. At least this way you maintain control of your own destiny. The discussion went on for an hour, with the class split on whether my strategy was brilliant or reckless. Professor Chen let the debate rage, occasionally steering it with pointed questions. At the end, he nodded at me. Bold analysis, well defended. Miss Hartley, you have a talent for seeing the leverage points others miss. I'll be interested to see how this case actually resolves. 3 months later, in the real world, my prediction came true almost exactly. The target company accelerated their trials, the drug candidates proved successful, their stock price soared, and the acquirer walked away having wasted millions on a failed, hostile takeover attempt. Professor Chen brought the news article to class and raised it in a toast. To Miss Hartley, who apparently has a crystal ball. I don't know how you called this so precisely, but it was impressive work. I smiled and accepted the compliment, not mentioning that I'd lived through this once before and already knew the ending. That spring semester was when everything started falling into place. I was excelling in Professor Chen's class, building a reputation as a strategic thinker. Rachel had introduced me to her circle of friends, wealthy students who respected competence over pedigree. Sophia's parents had confirmed my summer internship at their VC firm, with a stipend that would actually pay real money. Even my grades in other classes were perfect. I was on track to finish my first year with a 4.0. But the best part was watching Claire's world continue to crumble from afar. She'd called me over winter break, her voice tight with forced cheerfulness. How's Thornberry? Good, challenging but good. That's great. That's really great. A pause. I'm doing well too. State is fine. I'm thinking about transferring, actually. Maybe somewhere more prestigious. I'd bitten back a smile. State was a perfectly good university, but it wasn't Thornberry. It wasn't the future Claire had planned for herself. Well, good luck with that. Yeah, listen, I was thinking. Do you think you could introduce me to some people at Thornberry? Help me network a bit? It might help with my transfer applications. The audacity was breathtaking. After everything, she still thought she could use me as a resource. I don't think that's a good idea, Claire. Why not? We're sisters. Are we? I let the question hang. Because sisters don't poison each other's tea before important exams. Silence, then I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Have a nice life, Claire. I'd hung up, blocked her number, and never looked back. Mom had called next, more aggressive. Your sister needs your help. Family helps family. Does it? Because I spent 16 years helping Claire, and what did I get for it? Don't be dramatic, Lily. We gave you a home, food, education. You gave me scraps and told me to be grateful. Claire got everything else. And now that I have something she wants, suddenly family matters? You've changed. Mom's voice was cold. Thornberry has made you selfish. No, Mom. Thornberry gave me perspective. I was always this person. You just never bothered to notice. I'd ended that call too and felt lighter than I had in years. Dad's approach was different. He'd sent an email, formal, businesslike. Lily, your mother tells me you're refusing to help your sister with networking opportunities. I'm disappointed. The Hartley name has value, and we should support each other in leveraging it. Please reconsider. I'd written back, Dad, I'm building my own reputation at Thornberry, separate from the Hartley name. In fact, I'm considering whether to use Mom's maiden name professionally. Hartley is associated with Claire's failures now, and I don't want that attached to my future. Hope you understand. He hadn't responded. The message was clear. I was no longer playing by their rules. Spring semester also brought an unexpected opportunity. Isabella Cruz, one of my classmates in Professor Chen's seminar, approached me after class one day in March. Lily, do you have a minute? Isabella was old money, Manhattan penthouse money, her family having made their fortune in real estate generations ago. She was polished and poised, and I'd never spoken to her outside of class discussions. Sure, what's up? I'm putting together a proposal for a business competition. The Thornberry Venture Challenge. Winner gets $50,000 in seed funding and mentorship from the judging panel. I need a team of 3, and I want you on it. I blinked. Me? Why? Because you're the smartest person in that seminar room and everyone knows it. Derek Wallace is flashy, but you're the one who actually understands how business works. She smiled. Plus, I watched you handle the Marcus Sterling situation with Rachel. That was some impressive social strategy. That wasn't business. Everything is business. So what do you say? You, me, and I'm recruiting James Park from the engineering program. We have until April to submit a proposal, and then it's a pitch competition in May. The Venture Challenge. I remembered this from my first life. Claire had tried to enter with some half-baked idea and been laughed out of the preliminary rounds. The winning team had been 3 second-year students who'd gone on to found a successful startup that eventually sold for $80 million. But that was the first life. This time, I could be on that winning team. What's your idea? I asked. Student housing platform? Think Airbnb, but specifically for college students. Vetted hosts, built-in security features, pricing that works for student budgets. James has the technical skills to build it. I have the business connections. And you, she paused, you have the strategic vision to make it actually work. It was a good idea, a really good idea. The kind that could actually get funding and grow into something significant. I'm in. Excellent, Isabella grinned. We meet tomorrow night to start planning. This is going to be fun. The next 3 months were a blur of classes, planning sessions, and intense preparation. Isabella, James, and I worked late into every night, refining our business model, creating financial projections, designing the platform's features. James was a coding genius who could build anything. Isabella had the polish and presentation skills to sell ice to Antarctica. And I had the strategic insight to anticipate problems and design solutions before they became critical. We were a perfect team. The preliminary round of the Venture Challenge was in mid-April. 20 teams presented their ideas to a panel of faculty judges who would select 5 finalists for the main competition. We went up against some impressive competition: a sustainable fashion marketplace, a mental health app, a food waste reduction platform, and various other well-intentioned but undercooked concepts. Our presentation was flawless. Isabella delivered the pitch with confidence and charm. James demonstrated the working prototype he'd built. And I handled the financial analysis and market opportunity sections, showing the judges exactly how we'd scale the business and achieve profitability. When we finished, Professor Chen, who was on the judging panel, smiled. That's the kind of thinking I like to see. Well done. We made it to the finals along with 4 other teams. The final competition would be in front of a panel of real venture capitalists and business leaders, the kind of people who could actually fund the winner's venture. The stakes were real, and everyone knew it. But I had one more card to play before the finals. In late April, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a cultured voice said, "Miss Hartley, this is Edmund Hartley. I believe I'm your grandfather." The world stopped. Edmund Hartley was my father's father, the man who'd been estranged from our family for over 20 years. In my first life, I'd never known him. He died while I was in my poverty-stricken spiral, and I'd only learned of his existence after it was too late. Yes, sir, I'm Lily. I know who you are. I've been following your progress at Thornberry. Quite impressive. I wondered if you might join me for lunch this weekend. I'm in Connecticut for business, and I'd like to meet my granddaughter. My mind raced. Edmund Hartley was wealthy, powerful, and, according to family rumors, had cut off Dad after some kind of disagreement decades ago. If he was reaching out now, I'd be honored, sir. We met at an elegant restaurant in Hartford, the kind of place where the waiters wore white gloves and the menu had no prices. Edmund Hartley was in his 70s, tall and distinguished, with sharp eyes that reminded me of my own in the mirror. You look like your grandmother, he said after we'd ordered. She was a brilliant woman. I'm sorry you never got to meet her. Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Hartley. I have to ask, why now? Why reach out after all this time? He smiled approvingly. Direct. I like that. The truth is, I've kept tabs on the family even though I'm not in contact with them. Your father made choices I couldn't support, and we've been estranged since before you were born. But when I heard you'd won the Thornberry Scholarship, I started paying closer attention. You're exceptional, Lily, the kind of person who deserves support. My family supported my sister instead. Yes, I noticed that. Your father always did have terrible judgment about people. He invested everything in the flashy option instead of the substance. Edmund leaned forward. I'm a businessman, Lily. I invest in winners, and you're a winner. So let me be clear, I'd like to support your education and career. No strings attached, no obligation to the family you came from, just an investment in someone with real potential. This was the unfair advantage I'd been missing in my first life. The secret powerful ally who could have changed everything, and now through my own hard work and success, I'd earned his attention. What kind of support? I asked carefully. Financial, primarily. I'll cover your expenses at Thornberry, room, board, books. You can stop worrying about money and focus on your studies. After graduation, I can offer opportunities in my companies or funding if you want to start your own venture. And in the meantime, I can provide guidance, mentorship, connections. He paused. I built a billion-dollar portfolio, Lily. I know how to recognize talent and help it grow. That's what I'm offering you. $1 billion. Edmund Hartley had $1 billion fortune, and he was offering to invest in me. The irony was exquisite. In my first life, Claire had stolen the inheritance from his wife, my grandmother. Now he was giving me direct access to even more. On one condition, I said. His eyebrows rose. You're negotiating? Interesting. What's your condition? My family can't know about this, not yet. I need to succeed on my own terms first, build my reputation without the Hartley name or anyone's money overshadowing my achievements. After I graduate, we can go public with the connection. But until then, I want to be just Lily, the scholarship student who made it on merit. Edmund studied me for a long moment, then laughed. You are my granddaughter. That's exactly the kind of strategic thinking I'd expect from family. Very well, we'll keep this quiet, but the support is there whenever you need it. We shook hands, and just like that, I had a billionaire grandfather in my corner. The money helped. I'd no longer have to worry about every dollar, could afford better clothes, could focus entirely on my studies without working side jobs. But more importantly, I had access to Edmund's knowledge, his network, his decades of business wisdom, the Venture Challenge. Finals took place on a Saturday in May, in Thornberry's largest auditorium. 5 teams, 10 minutes each to pitch, followed by questions from a panel of 5 judges, 4 venture capitalists and 1 angel investor who'd funded over 50 successful startups. Our competition was fierce. Team 1 had a revolutionary recycling technology. Team 2 had a social justice app. Team 3 had an AI-powered tutoring platform. Team 4 had a subscription box service for sustainable products. And then there was us, the student housing platform. We went last, which Isabella said was either the best or worst position depending on how the judges were feeling. As we waited backstage, I reviewed our pitch one more time, making mental notes of weaknesses in the other presentations we could contrast against. You ready? Isabella asked, adjusting her blazer. Born ready, I said, surprising myself with the confidence in my voice. When our turn came, we walked onto that stage like we owned it. Isabella opened with a story about her freshman year, trying to find affordable summer housing and ending up in a sketchy situation. James demonstrated the app showing how easy it was to find verified, safe, affordable housing. And I closed with the numbers: market size, revenue projections, path to profitability, scaling strategy. The student housing market is worth $12 billion annually, I told the judges. But it's fragmented, inefficient, and often unsafe. We solve all 3 problems with technology, verification, and a business model that aligns everyone's incentives. Hosts get reliable income, students get safe housing, and we take a small commission on every transaction. Year 1, we project 50,000 users and $2 million in revenue. Year 3, 500,000 users and 30 million in revenue. Year 5, we're either going public or selling to a major real estate platform for 9 figures. The judges asked tough questions. How would we verify hosts? What about liability? How would we compete with Airbnb if they entered our market? We handled each question smoothly, demonstrating that we'd thought through every angle. When we finished, one of the VCs, a woman named Sandra Martinez, who'd funded 3 unicorn startups, smiled. That was impressive. You clearly understand this market and have a viable path forward. Good work. The deliberation took 20 minutes. We waited backstage, too nervous to talk. Finally, the judges returned to announce the winner. This was a difficult decision, Sandra Martinez said. All 5 teams showed promise, but one team stood out for the completeness of their vision, the sophistication of their strategy, and the clarity of their execution plan. The winner of this year's Thornberry Venture Challenge is Team 3, the student housing platform. We'd won $50,000 in seed funding, mentorship from the judges, and credibility that would open doors for years. Isabella screamed and Anya hugged me. James picked us both up and spun us around. It was the first time in either life I'd felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The aftermath of the Venture Challenge transformed my position at Thornberry completely. Suddenly, I wasn't just the smart scholarship student. I was a winner, someone with a funded startup and real potential. Students I'd never spoken to wanted to get coffee and pick my brain. Faculty members invited me to special events. Sandra Martinez personally called to offer summer mentorship at her firm. My first year at Thornberry ended with a 4.0 GPA, admission to Professor Chen's advanced seminar for the following year, a $50,000 business in development, and a billionaire grandfather backing my future. Claire had started with every advantage and squandered it. I'd started with nothing and built an empire. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Summer was transformative. I split my time between Sophia's parents' VC firm in San Francisco and working on the housing platform with Isabella and James. The VC internship was supposed to be educational, but Mr. and Mrs. Chen quickly realized I could add real value. They put me on due diligence teams, had me analyze potential investments, even asked my opinion on strategy decisions. You have an unusual talent, Mr. Chen told me in July. Most people your age see business as abstract theory. You see it as human behavior and incentives. That's rare. The housing platform, which we'd named Safe Haven, was growing faster than projected. Isabella had used her family's real estate connections to recruit verified hosts in 10 college towns. James had refined the app into something genuinely user-friendly. And I'd developed the marketing strategy, targeting students through social media and campus partnerships. By August, we had 5,000 registered users and were processing hundreds of bookings per week. The $50,000 in seed funding was stretching far because we'd been strategic about every expense. We were on track to be profitable by the end of the year. Edmund checked in regularly, offering advice and opening doors. "I'm proud of you," he said during one of our calls. "You remind me of myself at your age, hungry, strategic, unwilling to accept limitations." "Thank you, grandfather." I'd started calling him that, enjoying the sound of it. Family on my terms, not theirs. "Have you spoken to your parents?" "No, and I don't plan to." "Good, they don't deserve you." A pause. "Though I expect they'll come calling once they realize how successful you've become." He was right, of course. The call came in mid-August, 2 weeks before my return to Thornberry for sophomore year. "Lily," Mom's voice was strained, "we need to talk." "About what?" "About family. About supporting each other. I've been thinking about how things ended last year, and I think we all said things we didn't mean. I meant every word." "Lily, please." "Your sister's struggling. She didn't get into any of the transfer programs she applied to. She's depressed, she's not doing well, and as her sister, I'm not her sister. I'm not your daughter. I'm the girl you ignored for 16 years until she became more successful than your favorite. Now you want back in because you think I'm useful." "That's not fair, isn't it? Tell me, Mom, when's my birthday?" Silence. When did I learn to read? What was my favorite subject in school? What do I want to do with my life? I waited, knowing she had no answers. You don't know anything about me because you never cared to learn. I was just the backup child, the one who existed to make Claire look good. Well, guess what? I'm done with that role. Lily, don't call me again, I'm serious. I have a new life now with people who actually value me. You're not part of it. I hung up and blocked the number. Then I blocked Dad's number too and Claire's email addresses. Clean break. No looking back. Sophomore year at Thornberry started with a different energy. I wasn't the unknown scholarship student anymore. I was Lily Hartley, co-founder of Safe Haven, winner of the Venture Challenge, one of the top students in the business program. When I walked across campus, people knew my name. Rachel had become one of my closest friends. We'd gotten an apartment together off campus, along with Sophia, creating our own little family. Isabella lived nearby with her roommate, and the five of us formed a tight group, ambitious women supporting each other instead of competing. This is nice, Rachel said one evening as we all sat around our apartment working on various projects. I spent first year trying to fit in with people who didn't really care about me. This feels real. Because it is real, Sophia said. We're friends because we actually like each other, not because of social positioning. Though the social positioning doesn't hurt, Isabella added with a grin. We're probably the most well-connected group of sophomores at Thornbury. She wasn't wrong. Between Isabella's real estate network, Sophia's tech connections, Rachel's society ties, and my growing business reputation, we had access to opportunities most students only dreamed about. And we leveraged it, helping each other make connections, sharing opportunities, building each other up. Professor Chen's advanced seminar that year focused on hostile takeovers and corporate warfare. Exactly my area of expertise from my first life. I'd watched countless companies destroy each other through poorly planned acquisitions and defensive strategies. Now I got to analyze those same situations with the benefit of hindsight and a brilliant professor's guidance. One case study hit particularly close to home. A family business torn apart by sibling rivalry. The father had favored one child, giving them resources and opportunities while ignoring the other. The favored child had mismanaged the company, nearly bankrupting. The ignored child, had started a competitor and systematically stolen the original company's market share, eventually forcing a merger where they took control. It's a cautionary tale about succession planning, Professor Chen said, but it's also a lesson about the dangers of favoritism. The father's choice to invest everything in the wrong child destroyed his life's work. After class, he pulled me aside. I've been meaning to talk to you about your family situation, Lily. I hope this isn't too personal, but I'm aware that you come from a complicated background. I tensed. How much do you know? Enough to understand that you've succeeded despite said significant obstacles, not because of family support. That's impressive. But I also want you to know that you have support here. Faculty, friends, mentors. We see your potential. Thank you, Professor. Also, Maesa, he continued, I've been asked to recommend students for a special program, the Thornberry Fellows. 10 students selected for intensive mentorship and career development. It's highly selective, and the fellows get unprecedented access to business leaders, funded research projects, and guaranteed internships at top firms. I'd like to nominate you. The Thornberry Fellows. I knew about this program from my first life. Claire had lobbied desperately to get in and been rejected. It was the kind of credential that could open any door, launch any career. I would be honored, Professor. Good. Prepare a portfolio of your work, academic projects, safe haven materials, any other relevant experience. The selection committee meets in November. I spent the next 6 weeks assembling the most impressive portfolio I could create. Academic papers, business analyses, Safe Haven's growth metrics and financial projections, letters of recommendation from the Chen family and Sandra Martinez. Every piece of evidence I could find that I was exceptional, that I deserved this opportunity. The interview was in early December with a panel of 5 faculty members and 2 board trustees. They grilled me for 90 minutes about everything from my business philosophy to my career goals to how I handled setbacks. You've accomplished a great deal very quickly, one trustee said. Some might say suspiciously quickly. How do you explain your rapid success? It was a test, seeing if I'd be arrogant or defensive. I met his eyes calmly. Hunger. I've spent my entire life being told I'm not enough, being overlooked, and underestimate D. That creates drive. When you spend 16 years watching someone else get every advantage while you get nothing, you learn to work twice as hard and be twice as strategic. I'm not naturally brilliant, I'm naturally determined. Everything I've achieved came from refusing to accept the limitations other people tried to place on me. The trustee nodded, satisfied. That's honest. I appreciate that. They asked about Safe Haven's future, about my role in the business program, about how I'd contribute to the Fellows program. I answered each question with confidence backed by evidence. By the time I left, I knew I'd given them everything they needed to see that I belonged. The acceptance letter came 2 weeks later. 10 spots, hundreds of applicants, and I was in. The Thornberry Fellows, class of 2027. My name would be on a plaque in the business building, permanently associated with excellence. I called Edmund to tell him. Congratulations, he said warmly, though I'm not surprised. You're exactly what that program was designed for, exceptional students who will shape their industries. Thank you for everything, the support, the guidance. You've earned every bit of it, Lily. I invested in you because I saw potential. You've proven that instinct right 100 times over. He paused. Have you thought about what happens after graduation? I want to build something significant. Safe Haven is a good start, but I'm thinking bigger. Tech, maybe, or finance? Something that creates real wealth and impact. Good. When you're ready, we'll talk about funding. I have a feeling you're going to build something extraordinary. The spring semester of sophomore year brought new challenges and opportunities. The Fellows program included monthly dinners with business leaders, CEOs, investors, entrepreneurs who'd built billion-dollar companies. Each dinner was a masterclass in how power really worked, the unspoken rules and relationships that determined who succeeded and who failed. At one dinner, I sat next to Thomas Blackwell, yes, that Blackwell, the real estate mogul whose son had married Claire in my first life. He didn't know who I was, didn't know my connection to the family. To him, I was just another promising student. Real estate is about vision, he told me over wine. Seeing potential where others see only risk. My son never understood that. He wants the safe investments, the guaranteed returns. But that's not how you build an empire. What does build an empire? I asked, genuinely curious. Knowing when to be ruthless. Business isn't about being liked, it's about winning. You identify your advantages, you exploit them without mercy, and you don't apologize for succeeding. He studied me. You understand that, don't you? I can see it in your eyes. You're a killer. I smiled. I prefer to think of myself as strategic. Same thing in business. He handed me his card. Stay in touch. I like you. You remind me of myself at your age, hungry and willing to do what it takes. I pocketed the card, thinking about the irony. In my first life, the Blackwell family had been part of Claire's social circle, part of the network she'd used to steal from me. Now they were offering me opportunities, seeing in me the qualities they'd mistakenly attributed to her. But the best moment came in March during a Thornberry networking event. I was talking with Isabella and Rachel when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Excuse me, are you Lily Hartley? I turned to find a woman about my age, well-dressed but nervous. It took me a second to place her. Jennifer something, from State University. Then I realized she'd been one of Claire's friends, one of the people Claire had used and discarded. I am. Do we know each other? Not really. I'm Jennifer Park. I go to State with your sister, Claire. I just wanted to say, I heard about Safe Haven and I think it's amazing. Claire talks about you sometimes and I always thought, she trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Thought what? That she was jealous of you. She always acted like she was better than everyone, but whenever your name came up, she'd get this look. Like she was angry that you were succeeding. Jennifer smiled slightly, and anyway, I just wanted to tell you that you're an inspiration. Seriously, what you've built is incredible. After she left, Rachel raised her eyebrows. Your sister is jealous of you? How the tables have turned. She has no idea, I murmured. This is just the beginning. By the end of sophomore year, Safe Haven had expanded to 30 college towns with over 50,000 users. We were generating consistent revenue and had attracted interest from several larger companies wanting to acquire us. Isabella, James, and I agreed we weren't ready to sell. The platform was growing too fast, and we believed we could build something much bigger. My academic record remained perfect. 4.0 GPA, glowing recommendations from every professor, leadership positions in multiple student organizations. I'd also started mentoring first-year students, paying forward the kind of support I'd received from Sophia and Professor Chen. And through it all, I kept building relationships, making connections, positioning myself for the future I wanted. Every dinner, every conversation, every project was strategic. I wasn't just succeeding at Thornberry, I was building a foundation for the kind of power that would make me untouchable. The summer before junior year, Edmund made an unexpected proposal. I'm getting older, he said during one of our regular dinners. 76 this year, and I'm starting to think about legacy. I've built a substantial portfolio, and I need to decide what happens to it. You're planning your estate? In a manner of speaking, I have no other heirs. Your father chose to estrange himself, and I respected that choice. But you, Lily, you're everything I hope to find in family. Intelligent, strategic, driven. So I want to make you an offer. My heart raced. What kind of offer? After you graduate, come work for me. Learn the business from the inside, investments, acquisitions, portfolio management. I'll teach you everything I know about building wealth and wielding power. And when I retire, the business becomes yours, all of it. I stared at him, barely able to process what he was saying. All of it? 1.2 billion in assets, give or take, depending on market conditions, real estate, tech investments, private equity stakes, and cash. It's taken me 50 years to build, and I want to leave it to someone who'll build it even bigger. He leaned forward. I believe that person is you, but I need to know you're serious, that you're willing to dedicate yourself to learning this business inside and out. I'm serious, I said immediately. Grandfather, I've spent my entire life preparing for an opportunity like this. I won't waste it. Good, he smiled. Then it's settled. After Thornberry, you'll join Hartley Holdings as an executive trainee. We'll make it official. You'll be my designated heir. What about my father? Won't he contest this? Let him try. I have excellent lawyers, and the documents will be ironclad. Besides, your father burned that bridge years ago. He made his choice. Now I'm making mine. Edmund raised his glass. To the future, Lily. May you build something even more impressive than I did. I touched my glass to his, feeling the weight of destiny settling onto my shoulders. $1 billion. An empire. Everything I'd been denied in my first life, handed to me because I'd proven my worth. Junior year began with me walking through Thornberry's gates, knowing I was no longer just a student. I was an heir to a fortune, a successful entrepreneur, and one of the most respected students on campus. When I passed people in the halls, they smiled and said hello. Professors asked my opinion in discussions. Underclassmen looked at me with awe. It was intoxicating, and I never forgot how easily it could all disappear. That kept me sharp, kept me working, kept me building. Professor Chen's seminar that year focused on family businesses and succession planning, almost prophetically relevant to my situation. We studied dynasties that had lasted generations and ones that had crumbled in a single transition. The common thread in failures was always the same: choosing heirs based on sentiment instead of capability. The hardest decision a business founder makes is admitting their own child isn't qualified to lead, Professor Chen said during one lecture. But that sentimentality destroys more companies than any external competition. After class, I told him about Edmund's offer. That's extraordinary, he said, and well-deserved. Edmund Hartley is a legend in investment circles. Learning from him will be invaluable. I'm worried about my family's reaction, I admitted. When they find out, they'll be angry. People always are when they realize the person they underestimated has surpassed them. He smiled. But that's their problem, not yours. You've earned this, Lily. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for succeeding. The news broke in October when Edmund made it official. He announced his succession plan in an interview with the Financial Times. Lily Hartley, my granddaughter, will be joining Hartley Holdings after her graduation from Thornbury Academy. She represents the future of the company, and I'm confident she'll take it to new heights. The article included photos, my biography, my achievements at Thornbury. It was picked up by other business publications, making waves in investment circles. Edmund Hartley's mystery heir became a trending topic among business journalists. My phone exploded with messages, friends congratulating me, business leaders reaching out, and, inevitably, my family. Dad called first. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. Finally, I answered. Lily, I just saw the news. Is this real? Are you really Edmund's heir? Hello, Dad. Yes, it's real. But how? When did you reconnect with him? We've been estranged for 20 years. He reached out to me after I won the Thornbury Scholarship. We've been building a relationship for the past 2 years. Silence. Then, 2 years? You've known him for 2 years and never mentioned it? Why would I? You made it clear the family had no interest in supporting my success. I found support elsewhere. Lily, this is incredible. Do you understand what this means? The Hartley name will mean something again. We should celebrate, bring the family together. No. What? I'm not bringing the family together. You don't get to celebrate my success after ignoring me for 16 years. This is mine, Dad. Not yours, not Mom's, not Claire's. Mine. You're being unreasonable. We're your family. No, you were the people who raised me. Family is the people who actually care about you. Edmund is family. Sophia and Rachel and Isabella are family. You're just the people I happen to be born to. Lily, please. At least let us meet Edmund. Explain our side of things. Your side? You mean the side where you invested everything in the wrong child and now want credit for the one who actually succeeded? No thanks. Edmund knows exactly what kind of parents you were. Why do you think he left everything to me instead of his own son? I hung up before he could respond. Then I sent a clear message to all of them via email. To the Hartley family, you've seen the news about my inheritance. Let me be clear, this has nothing to do with any of you. You chose to invest in Claire, and that was your decision. I've built my own success with people who actually believed in me. Don't contact me expecting reconciliation or claiming credit. You had 16 years to be my family. You chose not to be. That door is permanently closed. Lily. Mom's response came within minutes. How dare you humiliate this family publicly? After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? You're an ungrateful, selfish girl, and you don't deserve that inheritance. Claire's was more desperate. Lily, please, I know things were hard between us, but I'm your sister. We can fix this. Can we at least talk? I'm struggling here, and you're getting billions. Can't you help me? I deleted both messages without responding. The fallout was spectacular. My parents tried to contact Edmund directly, claiming he was being manipulated, that I'd poisoned him against the family. Edmund's lawyers sent cease and desist letters. Claire posted on social media about family betrayal, painting herself as the victim of a greedy sister. Her friends believed her, but anyone who mattered, anyone in business circles, saw the truth. Your sister is making quite a scene online, Isabella observed one evening as we scrolled through Claire's increasingly unhinged posts. She's claiming you stole her inheritance? She's claiming I stole a lot of things. In her version of reality, she was the smart one and I sabotaged her entire life. Except everyone knows that's not true. Sophia looked up from her laptop. I looked her up. She's failed out of 2 universities now and is working retail. Meanwhile, you're about to inherit a billion-dollar portfolio. The evidence speaks for itself. Rachel added, My mother mentioned your family at a charity event. Apparently, they're persona non grata in our social circles now. No one wants to associate with people who treated their talented daughter that badly. It was everything I'd wanted. Complete vindication, public recognition that I'd been right and they'd been wrong. But it also felt empty somehow. I'd spent so much energy proving myself, showing them they'd made a mistake, that I'd forgotten to think about what came after the proof. "You okay?" Isabella asked, watching my face. "Yeah, just thinking about how weird it is. I spent my whole life wanting them to notice me, to value me. Now they do, but only because I have something they want. Doesn't actually feel like winning." "That's because it's not about them anymore," Sophia said wisely. "You already won. This is just the cleanup phase. The real victory is what you do next." She was right. The family drama was just noise. What mattered was the future I was building. Junior year continued with its challenges and triumphs. Safe Haven had grown large enough that we needed to bring in professional management. Isabella, James, and I remained on the board, but we hired an experienced CEO to handle day-to-day operations while we finished school. The company was valued at $12 million, not a unicorn, but extremely impressive for a student startup. Professor Chen selected me as his teaching assistant for the undergraduate business strategy course, a position normally reserved for graduate students. I helped design curricula, graded assignments, and occasionally led discussion sections. It was excellent preparation for the mentorship role Edmund envisioned for me at Hartley Holdings. I also started speaking at conferences about student entrepreneurship and the college-to-career pipeline. My story, scholarship student to business owner to billion-dollar heir, was compelling, and event organizers loved booking me. Each speech was an opportunity to build my reputation, make new connections, and position myself as a thought leader. By spring semester, I was being courted by multiple tech companies for post-graduation positions. Even though everyone knew I was joining Hartley Holdings, they wanted me on their boards as an advisor, anything to have Lily Hartley associated with their brand. It was surreal, and I never took it for granted. Every morning, I woke up remembering the girl I'd been in my first life. Broken, poor, invisible. That girl kept me humble and hungry. I never wanted to go back to being her. Senior year arrived with a mix of excitement and melancholy. This was my last year at Thornberry, the institution that had given me everything. My last year of being a student before becoming an executive. My last year of relative anonymity before stepping fully into the public eye as Edmund's heir. I'd also been selected as the student speaker for graduation, an honor that meant addressing 1,500 students and their families. The speech was months away, but I'd already started drafting it, thinking about what message I wanted to leave behind. Safe Haven hit profitability in September and was on track to reach $20 million in annual revenue. We'd been approached by 2 major companies interested in acquisition, both offering over $50 million. Isabella, James, and I discussed it seriously for the first time. "I could use the cash," James admitted. "My family isn't wealthy like yours. $50 million would change my entire life." "Mine too," Isabella said. "My family has money, but not that kind of money. This would make me independently wealthy." They both looked at me. I thought about it carefully. I didn't need the money. I'd be inheriting a billion-dollar portfolio. But they deserved their payoff. "I think we should take the higher offer," I said. "We built something real, and we should be rewarded for it. Let's negotiate hard, make sure we get the best possible deal, and then move on to the next challenge." We accepted an offer of $65 million from a major real estate technology company. After taxes and dividing the proceeds, I walked away with about $15 million, money I'd earned through my own work, separate from any inheritance. James and Isabella got the same. "We did it," Isabella said at the signing, tears in her eyes. "We actually built a company and sold it. We're 21 years old and we're millionaires." "We're exceptional," I corrected with a smile. "And this is just the beginning." The sale made national news. Youngest founders of a profitable startup, record-setting acquisition, the American dream alive and well. I did interviews with business publications, always emphasizing the team effort, the importance of finding the right partners, the value of education and mentorship. But behind the scenes, I was preparing for something much bigger. In December of senior year, Edmund called me with urgent news. "Your father is trying to challenge my succession plan. He's claiming that I'm not mentally competent, that you've manipulated me." I felt cold rage settle in my chest. Can he actually do that? He can try, it'll fail. I have recent medical evaluations proving my competence, and my lawyers have documented every stage of our relationship. But it'll be messy and public. I wanted to warn you. Let him try, Assis, I said. I have something that might help. What I had was information. In my first life, I'd eventually learned about my family's financial situations. Dad's failing investments, mom's credit card debt, Claire's multiple bankruptcies. But I'd never had the resources or standing to do anything about it. This time, I had both. I'd quietly been having Edmund's investigators look into my parents' finances, gathering documentation of every questionable decision, every debt, every failure. And what they'd found was damning. Dad's investment firm was on the verge of collapse, held together only by creative accounting and desperate loans. Mom had racked up over $200,000 in credit card debt funding Claire's lifestyle. Claire herself had burned through every cent of my grandmother's inheritance, the $12 million she'd stolen from me, on bad investments, luxury purchases, and schemes that never panned out. They were broke. Worse than broke, they were deeply in debt and running out of options. And now they were trying to take what was mine, claiming I'd stolen it through manipulation. Edmund, I said calmly, I think it's time we went on offense. What did you have in mind? A countersuit? Fraud, theft, and emotional abuse. I have documentation of everything. The poisoning before the scholarship exam, the money they forced me to give Claire, the inheritance she stole from me. I'll testify about the years of favoritism and psychological abuse. And we'll bury them. There was a long silence, then. You're sure? Going public with this will be painful for you too. I'm sure. They want to play dirty? Fine. But they're going to learn that I play better. The lawsuit was filed in January, days before my final semester began. The press had a field day with it. Billion-dollar heir sues family for abuse and fraud. My legal team laid out everything, detailed accounts of the favoritism, the poisoning, the stolen inheritance, the forced financial support. We had medical records, bank statements, witness testimonies, and a paper trail that was absolutely devastating. My parents' lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive, but the evidence was overwhelming. Claire had to sit for a deposition where she was forced to explain what happened to grandmother's $12 million. She claimed it had been invested poorly, but couldn't provide records. The implication was clear. She'd blown it all and had nothing to show for it. The media coverage was intense. Some outlets painted me as heartless, suing my own family. But most saw the truth. A young woman who'd survived years of abuse and was finally fighting back. Business publications especially rallied behind me, seeing it as a story about merit versus entitlement. Lily Hartley represents the best of American entrepreneurship, wrote one prominent journalist. While her family invested everything in a daughter who squandered opportunities, she built success from nothing. This lawsuit isn't about money. Lily doesn't need their money. It's about justice and accountability. The trial was scheduled for April, just weeks before my graduation. I spent every free moment preparing with my legal team, reviewing testimony, steeling myself for the public exposure. But there was one more card to play, one more piece of revenge I'd been planning since the day I'd been reborn. In March, I contacted Rachel. Remember when you helped me with Marcus Sterling? I need that kind of strategic thinking again. For your family? For Claire specifically. I want to offer her something she can't refuse. Something that'll destroy her when she takes it. Rachel's eyes gleamed. I'm listening. Here's what I knew from my first life. Claire was desperate to marry rich, to regain the social status she'd lost. In my previous timeline, she'd succeeded with Jason Blackwell, but that had been built on lies about her financial situation. This time, the Blackwells knew exactly how broke she was. But there was someone else. Someone I knew would be interested in Claire. Marcus Sterling. Marcus had been out of Thornbury for years, had gotten treatment for his gambling addiction, and was reportedly changed. He was back in society, trying to rebuild his reputation, looking for a wife who could help him seem stable and reliable. Claire and Marcus were perfect for each other, Two desperate, image-obsessed people willing to do anything to seem successful. Through Rachel's connections, I arranged for them to meet at a charity event. I had friends there who could make introductions, talk up each person to the other, plant the seeds. Marcus was told that Claire Hartley was from a prominent family with connections. Claire was told that Marcus had overcome his problems and was now heir to a fortune. Both pieces of information were carefully worded to be technically true while being fundamentally misleading. They fell for it perfectly. Within weeks, Marcus and Claire were dating. Within 2 months, they were engaged. The wedding was set for July, right after my graduation. You realize they're going to destroy each other, Rachel said, watching it all unfold. I know, that's the point. They deserve each other. The trial began on April 15th, in a courtroom packed with journalists and observers. My parents looked smaller somehow, diminished. Claire sat between them, her designer dress not quite hiding how thin she'd become. I took the stand and told my story, every detail of the abuse, the favoritism, the poisoning, the stolen inheritance. My voice never wavered. I presented evidence, methodically, medical records from the day of the exam showing elevated levels of sedatives in my system, bank records showing the transfers of my savings to Claire, legal documents showing how I'd been tricked into signing away my inheritance. Mom's lawyer tried to break me on cross-examination. Isn't it true that you're just angry your sister was more successful? No, I said calmly. I'm angry that my parents systematically abused me for 16 years while favoring a child who wasted every advantage they gave her. I'm angry that they poisoned me, stole from me, and tried to erase my existence. Success has nothing to do with it. Justice does. Dad testified that they'd done their best and that I was misremembering the past. But he couldn't explain the medical records, the bank transfers, the pattern of behavior that extended across 2 decades. Claire's testimony was the most painful to watch. She tried to play the victim, claiming she'd never meant to hurt me, that she'd just been following our parents' lead, but under cross-examination, she fell apart. You poisoned your sister's tea before the most important exam of her life, didn't you? I don't remember. You memorized wrong answers she gave you and then blamed her when you failed. She gave me those answers. She sabotaged me. Miss Hartley, your sister scored 394 out of 400 on that exam. The answers she studied were clearly correct. You failed because you didn't understand the material, not because she sabotaged you. Claire started crying. She's always been jealous of me. Everything I had, she wanted. And now she's rich, and I have nothing, and she's trying to destroy what's left of our family. You had a $12 million inheritance, my lawyer said coldly. Where is it now? Claire couldn't answer. She couldn't explain what happened to the money, couldn't justify how she'd gone from multimillionaire to bankrupt in just a few years. She just cried and claimed I was being cruel. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. They found in my favor on every count: fraud, theft, emotional abuse. The judge ordered my parents to pay restitution for the stolen inheritance plus damages. The total came to $15 million, money they didn't have. The court finds the defendant's behavior unconscionable, the judge said. To systematically abuse and defraud your own child while enriching another is a profound moral failing. Miss Lily Hartley has proven herself to be a person of exceptional character and capability, despite the obstacles placed in her path. I hope this judgment provides some measure of justice. I walked out of that courtroom feeling lighter than I had in 2 lifetimes. My family would likely declare bankruptcy to avoid paying the full judgment, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the public record, the official acknowledgement that I'd been wronged and had fought back and won.